In this lesson, we're going to expand our basic sweep arpeggio forms now to include the seventh. And the last lesson that we worked on, we were focusing on triad forms and how to play those and sweep those across the fingerboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to slightly modify the triad forms. We're going to play them a little bit different way and incorporate the seventh as well. It's going to give us some more harmonic options and also just give the overall sound of the sweep just a slightly more advanced or complex color to it, okay? So we're going to start with looking at the major triad that we were working with before, and recall that we were playing it from an A, and we were starting from the 12th fret A string, completing the octave with our plucking hand with the hammer on. What I want to do now is we want to move the root note down to the E string, and this is actually going to be a form that's going to incorporate all four strings, and we're going to move through the sweep form string by string, and we're going to ultimately end up with a combination of plucked notes or swept or brushed notes, however you want to look at that, combined with hammer-ons and pull-offs to create a slightly larger, more complex form. Now, the theory itself behind it is not very complex at all. We're just going to be dealing with forms that are based on seventh chord arpeggios, and as we know, seventh chord arpeggios are made up of the root, third, fifth, and seventh. Now, we're actually not going to just go precisely in order with the sweeped form, root, third, fifth, seventh, root, third, fifth, seventh, in the same way we would if we were just playing a regular traditional arpeggio form on the bass. But instead, we're going to leave out certain notes in order to make it more conducive to the sweeping motion. We're going to move our root to the C, which is the 8th fret E string, and this is going to be a form for the major seventh arpeggio. So from lowest note to highest note, the order of tones we're going to use is going to be root, third, fifth, octave, then third, fifth, and then seventh on top. Okay, so the way we're gonna play this is we're going to put our first finger on the root this time instead of our fourth finger like we did with the triad form from before, and I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to sweep the C note, and then I'm going to hammer on the third, the E above it, on the E string. So those are the first two notes. Then we're going to sweep the fifth, which is going to be the G note on the A string. That's 10th fret. And then we're going to sweep directly to the octave past that, which is going to be the 10th fret D string. Then we're going to sweep again through to the third, which is the E on the 9th fret G string, and then hammer on the 12th fret G string, which is going to be hammering on to the fifth, and then we're going to hammer using our plucking hand, using our first finger specifically from our plucking hand. We're going to hammer on the seventh, and that's the note B that's located at the 16th fret G string. So one more time, it's going to be thumb on the root, hammer the third, thumb the five, thumb the octave, thumb the third, hammer the five, hammer the seventh. Okay? Okay, that's the sound of the form. So that was, I talked you through the ascending portion of it. Now let's get the descending portion of it down. After you hammer the seventh on the G string, we're going to turn around in the same way we started descending with the triad forms. We begin our descension with the pull off. So after we hammer the seven, we pull off to the five, and then we're going to pull off to the three, and we're going to use our first finger to sweep the octave, sweep down to the fifth, sweep down to the third, and then pull off back to the root. Okay, so one more time. We hammer the 7, pull off to the 5, pull off to the 3. Sweep with the first finger, the index finger, to the octave, down to the 5th as well with the index finger, down to the 3rd with the index finger, and then finally we pull off. So it gives us a nice flurry type sound when we play it clean. And you want to make sure, once again, just like we were stressing with the triads, you got to make sure that you're not rushing through the form to where it's covering up a whole lot of mistakes. And mistakes most often with this technique come in the form of, number one, the muting, not having the muting taken care of. And number two, the durations of the notes to where the notes are kind of stepping on each other. So you want to make sure that you're working with this at very, very slow tempos. Now, I mentioned in our last lesson, it's great to hold yourself accountable to an external clock source. So once again, this is super important for making sure, especially when you're starting with the slow tempos, making sure the note lengths are very, very even and you're not getting a bunch of ringing strings as you move through each ascending and descending direction. So if I'm going to practice with the metronome, I want to make sure that I'm lining things up as perfectly as possible. So notice as I'm playing this, there's consistency not only in the timing and in the duration of the notes and keeping things muted, but also it's very, very important to pay attention to the dynamics. We're trying to make all the dynamics as even as we can. We don't want some of the notes to jump out and some of the other notes to disappear. You want to try to keep that on an even keel when you go note by note by note connecting the sweep form. So make sure that you are listening to that. One of the best ways that you can make sure that you are doing all of this stuff effectively is to record your practicing. If you record yourself practicing through the sweep arpeggio forms with the metronome or some other external clock source, when you listen back, you can truly not be distracted by the execution of the exercise, but instead you can listen to it as a whole and really decide whether or not you've got it nailed. I mentioned also in the first lesson for the sweeps that a good number to go through before moving the tempo higher is being able to play 5 in a row perfectly. If you can play 5 of these in a row without any mistakes, if you can do that at a current tempo, then you've got my permission to move on. But ultimately, when you're practicing something new, you want to be playing it a whole heck of a lot more times than just 5. So you want to make sure you get into a routine. You're building up the muscle memory to where your hands are beginning to synchronize automatically. When you first work on this, you're going to have to really think about and listen carefully to the timing between the two hands to make sure you're getting all these nuances covered. But make sure that you don't start increasing tempo until you have it down at the tempo that you're working at, which should be slow at first. Make sure you got that down before you move on. Now let's step through some of the other arpeggio forms, starting with the minor 7. So with the major 7, we were playing the root starting with the first finger of the fretting hand. We're going to do the same thing for minor. So I've got my first finger. We're going to play a C minor 7 arpeggio this time. So I got my first finger on the root. So I'm going to do the same exact order of chord tones, but now I need to change the tones that would be making it minor instead of major. So in this particular instance, we're going to take the major 7, our sweep arpeggio form. We're going to lower the 3rd and we're going to lower the 7. So we're going to thumb this root note C, we're going to hammer on the E flat, which is our flat 3. Then we're going to thumb the 5, follow through with the octave, thumbing the octave, and then continuing through, sweeping the flat 3 above the octave, and then hammering on the 5, and then we're going to finish off with hammering the flat 7 with the first finger of our plucking hand. All right, so talking talking you through the specifics of where these are played. We've got our 8th fret for the root, hammer on to the 11th fret of the E string for the flat 3. We're playing the 10th fret A string for the 5, 10th fret D string for the octave. Then we're going to be playing the 10th fret G string for the flat 3 above the octave, hammering on the 12th fret G string for the 5th above the octave, and then we're going to hammer on the flat 7, which is going to be found at the 15th fret G string. So the minor 7 form. All right, now with the metronome. All right, so keep all of those same principles that we were alluding to earlier with keeping things clean and even as you play each individual form. Now let's do the dominant 7 arpeggio form, sweep arpeggio form. And this is going to be one note different than the major 7 form. We're just going to lower that 7 to a flat 7. So once again, first finger on the root. We're going to play the root, hammer on to the 3rd on the E string, thumb the 5th on the A string, thumb the octave on the D string, thumb the 3rd on the G string, hammer the 5 on the G string, hammer the flat 7 on the G string. All right, and the frets we're playing, we got 8th fret E string for the root, hammering on to the 12th fret E string for the 3rd. Now playing the 10th fret A string for the 5th, 10th fret D string for the octave, 9th fret G string for the 3rd, hammering on to the 12th fret G string for the 5th, hammering on the 15th fret G string for the flat 7. Okay, that's your dominant 7 sweep arpeggio form. So here's the C minor 7 flat 5 sweep arpeggio form. So we're going to start with our first finger of the fretting hand on the root C again. We're going to hammer on to the E flat, which is the flat 3. We're going to play that on the 11th fret E string. We're going to thumb the flat 5. It's the 9th fret A string. We're going to thumb the octave, which is the 10th fret D string. We're going to thumb the flat 3, which is the 8th fret G string. Hammer on the flat 5, G flat, which is the 11th fret G string. And then we've got the flat 7, which is the B flat. We're going to hammer on the 15th fret G string. So here's that form. So that gives you all 4 of the 7th chord arpeggio forms using sweeps that comes from the harmonization of the major scale. And in an upcoming lesson, we're going to dig into the harmonization of the major scale a little more and derive some exercises from that we can use the sweeps with. So for now, you want to get really good with each of these individual forms, each of these 4 individual forms. You want to get your synchronization down. You want to keep everything clean. You want to be on top of the muting, and you want to slowly be working to increase your speed as you develop these skills. So these are great to open up some brand new ideas for your phrasing and your improvisation, and it might even influence some other compositional things for you as well. So have a great time working on these, and we'll see you in the next lesson.